If you're anything like me, you probably read a lot of creepypastas when you were younger. And today, I'm feeling a little nostalgic, so I want to take a look back at some of the old creepypastas we all love. While Ted the Caver is commonly seen as the first creepypasta, the first one to truly gain fame and bring them to the mainstream was Slender Man. Look at any art of the creepypasta characters and it'll be somewhere near the middle. In 2009, a thread was created on the somethingawful.com website, where people were asked to make their best paranormal photoshops. That's where Eric Knudsen posted two images. The first was a black and white image of a bunch of children, walking, with the one in the front not looking too pleased. In the background there's a tall, pale figure wearing a black suit. It was accompanied by text. We didn't want to go, we didn't want to kill them, but his persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time. The next one shows children playing at a park, with the same man in the background. One of the two recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken on the day which 14 children vanished, and for what is referred to as the Slender Man. It didn't take long after this post for the Slender Man to quickly take off in popularity, quickly turning him to the creepypasta icon he is today. The mysterious nature of the character is one of the main reasons it gains so much attention. With such little explained motivations, it can lead to fans being able to make their own little interpretations of why he does the things he does. The main consistent characteristics is that he's a tall, slender man, who could have guessed, without a face, who uses his powers to abduct kids. What does he do with the kids? I don't know. That's kind of the main part of what makes him scary though. You lose a lot of the fear of something which you know its intentions. Sure, it's still scary, but the unknown makes the thought of an encounter with the man to be even more terrifying. The other powers he has is these tentacles and the ability to mess with cameras and turn them into static. He's also 15 foot, which is menacing as hell. The main way he attacks people is by stalking them and slowly eating away at their sanity, causing them to hallucinate and eventually give in. Eventually, on the same thread, a username Cigars made a post about a friend that he had that was making a film, and said he was experiencing weird things during it. This became Marble Hornets, one of the first analog horrors ever uploaded to YouTube, about the Slender Man. The series is about a man named Jay trying to find out what happened to his friend, that abruptly stopped making his film and disappeared. This series also introduced the idea of proxies into the world of Slender. These are kids that fall under the insanity of the stalking, and eventually become violent because of it, working under the control of the Slender Man. The character of Slender Man was rapidly becoming more popular, so of course it eventually became a game named Slender.
That's a bit scary. Oh boy. Okay.
The game released in 2012 and was a hit with a Let's Play gaming YouTube scene at the time. You walk around this stupidly large forest and have to collect all 8 pages while being stalked by the Slender Man, slowly getting more aggressive the more pages you collect. The game is a pretty good tension building, with how it slowly gets louder the more pages you collect, and then eventually when you get the last one it goes completely silent. The game got a sequel and more stories about Slender were made until 2014, when two 12-year-old girls stabbed a fellow classmate 19 times in order to appease the Slender Man. The victim luckily survived and recovered, but the effect on the community was already done. It's shown a lot of bad light on the character, rightly so, and the Slender Man went dormant until 2018, when we got the Slender Man movie, and it sucked, like really bad. This was the nail in the coffin, and today the horror icon is either forgotten or merely joked about. But the impact it had on the horror community is still felt and is very important. Standing alongside Slender as one of the main creepypasta icons is Jeff the Killer, another character that blew up mainly due to the image accompanying it. Like Slender, the origins of the image is unknown. To this day, we don't know what the original unedited photo of this image looks like. The story accompanying it though, unlike Slender, is just not scary at all. I've no idea how you think this is tough. You did too though, don't lie. The story goes a little something like this. Jeff was a 13-year-old boy who moved to a new neighbourhood with his brother, Leo, and their parents. On their first day of school they were accosted by 3 bullies named Randy, Keith and Troy, who Jeff brutally beat up after they threatened them with knives. Leo took the blame for it and was arrested, sending Jeff into a deep depression. The bullies later attacked Jeff again at a party, and Jeff killed one of them, but not before getting covered in bleach and lit on fire by Keith. During this fight, Jeff's mind permanently snapped. When Jeff woke up, he was at the hospital, and his head was wrapped in bandages. When the bandages were taken off, it was revealed that his face has become disfigured and a ghastly pale from the burns, with bright red lips and a leathery texture. Jeff said that he liked his face this way and laughed hysterically, but the doctor foolishly thought that this insanity was just a side effect of the painkillers, and let Jeff go home. Later that night, Jeff's mother found him, carving his face into a permanent smile, so that he no longer would have to exert energy to smile, as he put it, and burning off his eyelids so he could always see his face. Jeff's mother went to her husband to tell him that their son had gone completely mad and needed to be killed, but Jeff caught them and stabbed them to death. This woke up Leo, who was recently released, with Jeff telling him as he was about to plunge the knife into his body, "Go to sleep." Jeff then went on a serial killing rampage, killing those who refused to sleep at night, and as the story continued, Jeff renamed himself Jeff the Killer. So not the greatest of stories, but it made an impact. People loved this guy. There was tons of fan art that actually looked pretty sick. Similarly to Slender, people quickly got to writing their own interpretations of the character, and some people even made their own characters based on good old Jeff. Think Jane the Killer or Tiki Toby. The image that goes along with Jeff is definitely the part of the character with the most staying power. While sure it's not scary anymore because I've seen it so much, back in those days where I was first seeing this dude, I'd be lying if I said this image didn't scare me. I remember watching them creepypasta art videos where they tell a story and draw a picture of the character. Oh, the joy of unrestricted internet access. Oh, the joy of stressing at night about leaving my room to go to the toilet, having to choose between pissing myself or risking being Jeff the Killed or Freddy jump scared. A character that I actually do still like to this day is Eyeless Jack. The original story is a very simple but effective one. A 23-year-old man named Mitch moves in with his brother Edwin after his house is foreclosed. A week later, Mitch wakes up with a large gash in his cheek. After going to the hospital, the doctor reveals that Mitch's left kidney had been surgically removed overnight. Around midnight that night, Mitch awakes to see Eyeless Jack over his bed, wearing a blue mask with black liquid dripping from empty eye sockets behind the mask. Mitch was terrified at first and managed to grab his camera to take a picture before Jack attacks him, clawing at his chest. Mitch escapes and flees into the wood, where he trips and is knocked unconscious. When Mitch awakes in the hospital, it gets revealed to him that Edwin had been killed the previous night. His parents drive into his house to collect his belongings. When he enters, Mitch sees Edwin's corpse and a small object lying next to it. He observes it to find out it's a kidney, with a bite taken out of it, covered in a black substance. However, Edwin's corpse was buried a few days later after the attack. The story had pretty much nothing known about him, but that's the whole reason he got popular. The creepypasta scene as a whole loved and thrived off writing fan stories about these characters, and having a mysterious character whose only known traits having no eyes and eating kidneys leaves a lot of room for stories you can do with him. The picture that accompanies it also goes really hard. This is definitely a contender for my favourite creepypasta image. The idea of waking up in the night and seeing a figure watching you is a fear that I think everyone has, and having that person to be a blank-faced, empty-eyed man is pretty scary in my opinion. The origin story that most people run with as canon for Jack is that he was a regular college student who eventually goes into the forest with a group of people. They turn out to be in a cult and try to use him for a ritual. Tar gets poured into his eyes, giving him the vision of their god, but they mess something up with the ritual, and Jack gets turned into a monster, who murders them all and escapes. I actually quite like this. The story and the character is actually really appealing to me. It's a cool concept for a character being a failed sacrifice. I honestly thought I'd look back on this guy like I did Jeff the Killer and think it was goofy and wonder how I ever thought this was scary. I actually love everything this character stands for. He shows the main thing I love about creepypasta. The fact that one person can make a short horror story and it has such a big impact on the community. Inspiring people to make their own art of the characters or write their own stories about them, or just selling creepypasta in general. I'm sure the ambiguous nature of Jack is the reason so many people decide to write a story. And that's great. While the previous two creepypastas had an image along with the story, Smile Dog as a picture is its main focus. The whole thing about the Smile Dog is that you see the picture of the dog and then you have to send it to another person or you'll be, I don't know, smile dogged or something. The main effect of you seeing the Smile Dog is being stalked by the dog until you eventually lose your sanity. If I remember correctly, the story attached to it had a woman who was going insane due to the Smile Dog and sent it to the author, and at the end of the story we see the picture. This was a great setup for a creepypasta. I just realised that I haven't actually explained what a creepypasta is yet. Basically, in a short off the top of my head definition, they're basically copypastas but creepy. A copypasta is a text that is made to be shared around the internet repeatedly. This is why the Smile Dog is the best creepypasta from the definition. People read the story, share it, more people see the picture, share it again, so on and so forth. Obviously the story was fake and nothing happened to you if you didn't share it, but it's better to be safe than sorry, right? With multiple new images being made based off the Smile Dog, it wasn't clear which image was the original to people that simply saw the image along with the text. People claim that the whole Smile Dog thing was fake, but the idea that you might just have the real one, the image that will curse you with the Smile Dog, is it really worth the risk? The main two Smile Dog images I see is the original and then this red one. The red one is commonly seen as the real one and is probably most popular, but the husky one is the one that was attached with the creepypasta. The creepypasta that I'd say pioneered the lost media genre is Cove. The pasta is about an old TV show that people remember, and then piecing together bits and pieces of it. Throughout the story, they recite things that aren't really suitable for a children's show, and at the end of the story, someone goes to see their mum in a nursing home, and asks about the show. That's when they say that their mum told them that when they were younger, they used to say that they were going to watch Cove, and then they'd go stare at the TV static for half an hour. The story is actually pretty good, and I recommend you give it a read. Like I said a second ago, Cove kind of pioneered the lost media genre. There are a few other Lost episode creepypastas as well. Think Dead Bart, a Lost Simpsons episode where he falls out of a plane and dies. Squidward's suicide. Take a guess what happens in that one. And Mouse.avi, a Lost Mickey Mouse episode where he walks through the street. As the background distorts and other spooky stuff happens. Another creepypasta series that sort of pioneered a genre is Ben Drowned. I do want to make a full video on this story and it's coming after this one, so I won't go too deep into it in this. The story is about a guy who buys a copy of Majora's Mask from a garage sale, and while he plays it, multiple weird and off-putting things happen in the game, uncovering the true story behind the haunted cartridge. The idea of taking Majora's Mask, an already unsettling and intense and atmospheric game, and adding another layer of horror to it with the story of Ben, is executed greatly. The Song of Unhealing is also a really nice song to listen to. The series has a lot of genuinely off-putting and great moments. All the visuals are haunting, and the tension building is done very effectively. I'll make a video on it soon after this one, like I said. Another game-based creepypasta, and the one I was drawn to the most when I was younger due to me being a Sonic fan, is Sonic.EXE. And yeah, it's not good. The Green Hill song is a banger though. The story is about a guy who gets a delivery from his friend with a note telling him to destroy the game he sent. He puts it in his console and plays the spooky version of Sonic where all the characters get killed by Sonic. After playing through the game, he tries to turn it off and take it out of the console, but he can't. He hears a voice from behind him.
Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom.
He turns around and sees a Sonic plushie on his bed with blood dripping from the eyes. I know. Terrifying. The Past are also the game that followed it, which is basically just a game version of what he described he played. The gameplay is just you walking forward for an empty bloody Sonic level. It's either Tails, Knuckles or Eggman, until you reach the end and get killed by Sonic. But regardless of the quality, Sonic.exe blew up and multiple people played the game and read the story. Dozens of EXE games followed, and other stories based on Sonic were also made. Tails not being the one I used to like the most. This time we play Sonic R, and there's a spooky Tails plushie. A game that came out in recent time that I'd say nearly perfects the idea of a Sonic horror game is Green Mountain. I covered it in this video here, so I'll upload the section from that. Skip to the next chapter or this timestamp if you've already seen it. Mysteriously posted on the Sonic Fan Games HQ site at the start of this year, by a user who made the account only days before and hasn't posted since. Green Mountain is a game that really absorbed me. For what little we have, there's really something about it that is so interesting. Opening the game, we drop straight into Green Hill Zone. No title screen, nothing. This time it's different. The game is far more saturated than the original. Sonic's eyes are closed. The music in the background is distorted and different. The sky's black, there's no enemies, and the level is far more vertical than normal Sonic levels. The level is far more of a climb than the original Green Hill. Going through, we actually do some platforming, which is surprising since normal Sonic horror games really just have you walking forward most of the times. One thing to note is that Sonic can take full damage. As inconsistent as the series is, one of the only things that has stayed consistent over the franchise is its lack of full damage. Getting rid of that makes Sonic feel oddly realistic in this game. At the top of the mountain we're greeted by this. A darker version of Sonic with no face, just a black void in its place. A fight starts with it, but it's not much of one. The Sonic Wii players can't die. The other Sonic's animations are different to us as well, the jumping most notably. Instead of going into a ball, it jumps almost like a human would, or like how it does in Sonic 06. After beating it, it sinks into the ground. No victory music, no end level screen, nothing. Trying to walk left or right we can't. Sonic's now trapped between the borders of the screen. Just him and these 4 totems. The totems aren't the normal Sonic ones though. The totems resemble Haniwas, Japanese sculptures used to mark burial grounds and protect the dead. After standing for a few minutes, Sonic's jaw falls off. Then the world around him starts crumbling into black. More of Sonic rots away until he resembles the thing we just fought. Then we get the game over screen. So from what we can tell so far, Sonic climbs the Green Mountain Trail, arrives at the top, fights and beats an assorted clone of himself, then rots away, taking the form of the thing, and being left in a void. Possibly repeating a cycle. Just how long till another player climbs the trail, sending another Sonic to the same fate as ours. But like most new indie horror games that come out in recent times, there's more than meets the eye. Using an Undertale mod tool, we can view the files of the game. In there, some of the names for models and textures are off, telling a story of sorts. Did you bring the shovel? We left it in the car. It's in the pack. You already need to go? No, but I need to mark something. I'll set stuff up at the clearing. Yeah, speaking of, how far is it? We've been tracking up this route forever. Green Mountain is not far. We will get there sooner than later. Okay. Have you talked to her lately? Not really. Couldn't you do it now? No. Why? I don't want to talk. Why not? I'm exhausted as it is. Okay. We're here. We read about a conversation between 2 people hiking the Green Mountain Trail to bury something. That something is unclear. It's also not clear if Green Mountain is the actual location in-game, or if this version of Green Hill is merely representing it. We also don't know who this she character is. The tomes at the top of Green Mountain don't paint a very pleasant picture for what they are burying though. That question of what being buried is soon answered. Going through the files we find an image named Returnal. We see a very dark image that looks to be taken in the woods, with a blue shape in the middle. Brightening the image up, we can make out what looks to be a mangled, rotting Sonic corpse. The same one we saw at the top of Green Mountain. This is what they were burying. This is where I get to theorising. The story could either be about two people in real life burying a body on Green Mountain, the Green Hill Zone being a representation of that mountain, and the Sonic at the top representing the body. Or you could go the route of this being a horror story directly about Sonic, Tails and Knuckles being the ones trekking the Green Mountain, a place in Green Hill Zone, to bury the corpse of a dead Sonic. My theory for what we play as in the game though, is either we place the spirit of the dead person, hence why Sonic's eyes are closed, climbing the mountain to get back to their body, only to rot away again and continue the cycle of torment. Or this will only apply to the first story of two people in real life burying a body. The two people in the story being murderers, killing multiple people and burying them on Green Mountain. The Sonic we play as in-game representing a new victim, being taken up the mountain to eventually be buried and meeting the same fate as the Sonic at the top. The story is left purposely ambiguous, so I'd love to hear your interpretations in the comments. The game shares a lot of similarities with the Mario game of the Creepypasta era, simply titled Mario. The game similarly has you traversing through empty levels of a game while you learn about a dark story, Mario also having a disturbing image hidden in the files. By turning a text file into an image file, we see this. At the time in 2010, it was very disturbing. We didn't know the source of it, but now we do. It being a cover of a band. But we still don't know the origin for the Returnal photo. Another theory I see going around for Green Mountain is a far darker one that I highly doubt to be true, but if it is, it's quite disturbing. Some people believe that Green Mountain is actually someone confessing to a real murder they did. Personally, I don't think this is true, but if it is, it's a very weird way to confess, a very cryptic one as well. Pokemon has had a fair few creepypastas, but the most known is the Lavender Town Syndrome. In the original Pokemon games, Lavender Town was a cemetery where Pokemon were buried. It was also accompanied by this music. Damn, all these gaming creepypastas have actually really good music. The actual creepypasta was that in very early versions of Pokemon Red and Green, the Lavender Town music would play at a certain frequency that only children and teens could hear. After listening to it, they would take their own lives. The older people that listened to it would say they got headaches. After the incident, Nintendo quickly changed the games, and now we have the Pokemon Red and Green we have today. I was shocked when I first heard this story, until I listened to the apparent real song on YouTube and nothing happened. But back then I still believed it was true. The main reason people thought this was real though, was because unlike other video game creepypastas, it bases itself in reality, not using the idea of a haunted game like Sonic.EXE. I think Ben Drown did the haunted game idea very well though. Instead, it's basing itself on something that already exists and is spooky in the game. Kinda like how Tails Doll was a better story than Sonic.EXE, with how Tails Doll already existed in Sonic R and was pretty unsettling in that. While the other pastas on this list attempted to stay realistic, the creepypasta that I was fully sold on being real for the longest time was the Russian sleep experiment. Unlike the other pastas either being about haunted games or something like Jeff the Killer, which is obviously just a horror story, the Russian sleep experiment did a great job at feeling realistic and convincing me and others that it was real. This is the story. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 30 days, using an experimental gas-based stimulant that was intended to remove their need to sleep. The test subjects were political prisoners, deemed enemies of the state during World War II. The 5 subjects were given basic things they needed to survive, and were monitored by the researchers. For the first 5 days they were fine. They hardly complained under the false promise that they'd be released if they didn't sleep for 30 days. After 5 days the subjects started to become more paranoid, and did things like recite stories of their past and tell the researchers where their comrades are. They also stopped talking to each other, and only spoke in whispers. After 9 days, one of the subjects began running around the chamber and screaming violently for 3 hours, until he tore his vocal cords, continuing to scream after that but only being able to make slight squeaks. None of the other subjects reacted to this, and they continued to whisper in the microphones. Eventually, a second of the subjects started to scream, and another 2 started ripping pages out of books that were provided for them, and smearing the pages with their own feces, putting it on the windows to cover themselves. The screaming stopped. The researchers had no way of hearing or seeing the subjects anymore, as it was dead silent and the windows were covered, but the oxygen meters were still reading that they were alive. Without any other option, the researchers said that the subjects would be freed, and they needed to lay down on the ground or they'd be shot. One of the subjects spoke up. "We no longer want to be free." After a lengthy discussion, the researchers decided that the subject should be let out. They opened up the doors, and as the outside air flooded in, the subject started to let out blood-curdling screams. Screams of which were interrupted by the screams of the researchers that saw the inside of the chamber. Only 4 of the subjects remained, with the 5th being consumed on the floor. The live subjects had chunks of their flesh ripped off, their insides pouring out of them, but somehow still working. The appearance of the fingers made them look self-inflicted. The subjects fought against the researchers. They all begged for more gas, and after the researchers experimented on them, only 1 remained. They put the remaining 1 back in the chamber and on the gas, and while inside the room with it, a researcher overhears a commander say that they want to lock the researchers in the room with the subject. The one who heard quickly drew his gun and shot the commander in the head, before turning and pointing his gun at the subject. "What are you?" he asked. "I must know." The subject smiled. "Have you forgotten so easily? We are you. We are the madness that lurks within you all, begging to be free at every moment, in your deepest animal mind. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go to the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread." The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject's head and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out. So nearly free. While yes, it relies on shock value and gore for its horror, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. I didn't fully read out all the descriptions in this video, but if I make a full video on it, I will. But it adds to the horror in my opinion. The main theme of the story is about what would happen to the human body if it was denied sleep, and the depiction of that is terrifying. The idea that the only thing keeping us from becoming the twisted, rotting monster that the subjects became is sleep is a scary one. The bit at the end where the final subject gives its speech and says "so nearly free" suggests that the true form we have as humans is that. In our most raw form we are them. The only thing keeping us from how we're meant to be is sleep. The subjects all became obsessed with the gas, and in their sleepless states, they went as far as to cover pages of books with their own feces, in order to block the eyes of the researchers, watching them, judging them. While creepypastas are no longer as popular today as they were, their impact can still be felt. There are tons of ARGs now, a subgenre that I can mainly attribute to Ben Drowned. Things like Sonic.EXE took the forms of analog horror, with series like Needle Mouse. The main form I would say creepypastas have evolved into is analog horror. There are tons of series based on the characters or concepts pioneered in the creepypasta era. And I say that the analog horror series that feels like the biggest celebration of creepypasta is Chainmail Chasers. A series about someone who tries to find the origins of creepypasta images and Smile Dog infecting their PC and tormenting them. Another series I want to cover on this channel as well. Creepypastas as a whole were a huge part of my younger life. All the characters and the stories terrified me in the greatest way possible. And while most aren't anywhere near as scary anymore, I and many others still remember them fondly and care about them today. The impact of these creations is still felt. I said it in the Eyeless Jack section, but I love how so many people's creations were able to blow up and be loved by many. And there were so many really talented people in the community. I feel so much nostalgia looking at the art of all the characters standing together, seeing so many different people's creations be celebrated. As bad as some of these stories are, they're all art, and I believe that any sort of art done in good heart should be celebrated. I know I may have dissed some of these stories a bit, but I was going to have a bit at the end of the video I ranked them all, but I love them all so much. I'm struggling to put it into words how much each of these stories and characters have been a part of my life for a significant chunk of it. Now I'm starting to remember as I'm writing this video. Ben Drowned and the Russian Sleep Experiment are probably my favourite, but even with stories like Jeff the Killer, I look back at them with nothing but love and fondness. This has probably been my favourite video to make yet. Rereading and experiencing all of these has been a real nostalgic trip, so I hope you enjoyed and maybe share some of your favourite creepypastas in the comments. Stick around as well if you want to see them videos because I'm currently working on the Ben Drowned one. Thank you for watching, goodbye.